Most people think that the loudest voice in the room is the most powerful, but in reality, the opposite is true. Power is not always in the noise you make. Real power lies in the silence you keep. Think about it. When a global leader asks for help in public, the world expects an immediate response. We live in a time where every word is analyzed, every statement is tweeted, every silence is questioned. But imagine this, a leader doesn't say anything, no yes, no no, just silence. What happens? The world cannot stop talking, news channels go crazy, analysts debate, people speculate, and suddenly the one who said nothing becomes the center of every conversation. That is the power of silence. In life and in business, silence works the same way. When someone criticizes you, what most people do, they react immediately, they fight back, they want to prove themselves right. But the truth is, silence often hurts more than words, because silence shows confidence. It shows you are not shaken, it shows you are above the noise. Let me give you a story. Years ago in China, a young entrepreneur was struggling with his company. Everyone around him said he would fail. The media said his business model was stupid. His competitors laughed at him, and you know what he did? He said nothing. He just worked quietly. He let people talk. He let them write. He let them laugh. Years later, those same people who mocked him were asking for his partnership. Why? Because he chose silence over reaction and progress over arguments. This is the same lesson we see in politics. When the most powerful country in the world makes a request, begging for help, and the other side chooses silence, it is not weakness, it is strength, it is not hesitation, it is calculation, because silence creates curiosity, silence creates pressure, silence makes the other side wonder, why no answer, what are they planning, what do they want in return, and this is how silence flips the game. The one asking for help becomes restless. The one who stays silent gains control. The world was shocked, not because of the request, but because of the silence that followed. That silence was louder than a speech, louder than a press release, louder than a promise. It showed something very important. True leadership is not about talking all the time. True leadership is knowing when not to talk. Even in our personal lives, this applies. Maybe your friends challenge you, maybe your colleagues doubt you, maybe your competitors try to pull you down. If you answer every word, you waste your energy. If you stay silent and keep moving forward, you confuse them, you control them, you rise above them. Remember, silence is not emptiness. Silence is strategy. Silence is a language, and the world listens to it more carefully than it listens to speeches. So next time you are pressured to respond, don't rush. Don't let noise control you. Sometimes the most powerful answer you can give is no answer at all, because in that silence lies true power, dependence and independence. These two words decide whether a person, a company, or even a country will rise or fall. When a powerful leader publicly asks another nation for help, it reveals something very important. It shows dependence. It shows that no matter how strong you look on the outside, inside you are vulnerable, and when the world sees that dependence, the balance of power begins to shift. Think of it like business. Imagine two companies. One company always waits for funding, for investors, for someone else to rescue them. The other company struggles, but it builds step by step, without begging, without leaning too much on others. Which company has real strength? It's the one that learns to stand on its own, because dependence is a trap. Once you depend too much, you lose your freedom to decide, you lose your ability to say no. When a superpower begs for help, it may think it is showing humility, but actually it is showing weakness. And when the other side chooses silence, it is sending a clear message. We don't need you, you need us. That is independence, and that independence shakes the world. Look at history. Every great nation, every great leader, every great entrepreneur had to pass this test, the test of standing without crutches. There was a time when India depended on others for technology, for defense, even for food. But slowly, step by step, it learned to grow its own grain, build its own satellites, design its own weapons. Dependence became independence, and today, when silence meets a request, the world sees confidence, not fear. The same is true for people. When you are dependent on others, for money, for validation, for direction, you will always be controlled. You will always be waiting for someone else to decide your future. But when you build independence, financial independence, emotional independence, intellectual independence, you become free. You become unshakable. I remember meeting a small startup founder years ago. He told me, "Sir, I cannot move forward unless I get this big investor. Without them, my company will die." I asked him, "What happens if they say no? Will you still fight? Will you still innovate? Will you still try?" He looked at me quietly, and then he realized the truth. As long as his dream depended on someone else's wallet, it was not really his dream, it was rented. He had to own it, not borrow it. And that's the lesson we see at the global stage today. When the strongest appear desperate, it is because dependence has weakened them, and when the other side remains calm, it is because independence has given them strength. The world was shocked because they saw the roles reversing. The one who once gave orders is now making requests. The one who once obeyed is now silent. That silence came not from arrogance, but from independence, and that is the ultimate power shift. In life, never build your future on someone else's foundation, because if they remove it, you collapse. Build your own. It takes longer, it is harder, and people will laugh at you, but one day, when they come to you asking for help, your silence will be the loudest answer. Dependence makes you a follower. Independence makes you a leader, and the world only respects leaders. Leadership is not about how many words you speak, it's about how many people follow even when you say nothing. Too often, we think leaders must always talk. They must give speeches, issue statements, release tweets, make promises. But history shows us something different. True leaders don't always rush to answer. They don't need to prove themselves with noise. Their strength comes from presence, from decisions, from the ability to stay firm when others are shaking. When a leader begs for help and another leader responds with silence, the message is very clear. Real power is not in talking. Real power is in holding your ground. Think of it like this. Imagine two business partners in a negotiation. One keeps talking, keeps lowering the price, keeps offering more. The other just sits, listens, and stays calm. Who is in control? Not the one talking. It is the one who waits, because the more you talk, the more desperate you look. The one who stays silent forces the other side to reveal everything first. That is what leadership beyond words looks like. It is patience, it is discipline, it is the courage to resist the pressure to speak when the world is demanding a reaction. Let me tell you a story. There was a young executive who worked in a very competitive company. Every time his boss criticized him, he jumped to explain himself. He wanted to defend every mistake, justify every decision, argue every detail. His boss told him, "You talk too much." Leadership is not about explanation. It is about execution. Years later, when he finally learned to stop reacting to every challenge and instead focused on results, people began to respect him, not because of what he said, but because of what he did. That's the difference between a leader and a talker. Talkers chase attention. Leaders create impact. Talkers speak to be heard. Leaders act to be remembered. Now think about the global stage. When one leader asked for help and another chose silence, people were confused. Some thought it was arrogance, some thought it was weakness, but in reality, it was something else. Leadership beyond words. It was the decision to let action, not talk, decide the future. And this is something all of us must learn. In business, your clients don't care how well you speak. They care about the value you deliver. In life, your friends don't remember every word you said. They remember how you stood by them when it mattered. And in leadership, People don't follow you because of your speeches. They follow you because of your vision and your actions. Words are cheap. Action is expensive. And leaders who change the world are not the ones who make the most noise, but the ones who keep moving forward even in silence. The moment that shocked the world wasn't about communication. It was about restraint. It showed that leadership is not tested when things are easy. It is tested when the pressure is high and the whole world is waiting for you to break. If you can stay calm, stay silent, and wait for the right moment, then you are already leading. So remember this: leadership is not about always having an answer. Leadership is about knowing when to speak, when to act, and when to say nothing, because sometimes the strongest statement is silence itself. That is leadership beyond words. There was a time when the world looked at India as a land of potential but not of power, a country rich in culture, history, and people, but always dependent on others for its progress. For decades, India's role on the global stage was to follow, not to lead, but today things have changed. India's silence in the face of global pressure is not hesitation. It is confidence. It is proof that India has finally stepped into a position where it does not need to answer every call, because its presence already speaks enough. In the past, when a powerful nation demanded something, India was expected to respond immediately. That was the image the world carried. But now, when the most powerful leader on earth asks for help and India chooses silence, it shocks everyone. Why? Because it tells the world this is not the India of yesterday. This is the India that knows its value, knows its strength, and is not afraid to show it. The rise of India is not just about technology or economy. It is about mindset. Decades ago, India struggled for food security. Today, it exports food. Decades ago, India bought technology from others. Today, it launches rockets into space and supplies software to the entire world. Decades ago, India imported defense equipment. Today, it builds and even exports its own. This transformation is not an accident. It is the result of resilience, of learning, of refusing to stay dependent forever. And when this new India stays silent in the face of global begging, it is not ignorance. It is maturity. It is the understanding that true power does not rush to prove itself. True power lets the world realize it on its own. Think about it. When a student tops the exam, does he need to tell everyone he is intelligent? No. His result speaks for him. When a business grows into a giant, does it need to advertise that it is successful? No. Everyone already sees it. In the same way, India's silence has spoken louder than any words could. It has told the world, we have arrived. I once met an investor who used to say, never show desperation in negotiation. The moment you look desperate, you lose everything. But the moment you stay calm, people will realize they need you more than you need them. That is exactly what India demonstrated. The old India might have rushed to respond. The new India does not need to, because it is already being sought after. This rise is not just important for India. It is important for the world because the global order is changing. For years, power was concentrated in the West, but now voices from Asia, especially India, are shaping the future. The silence that shocked the world is not just political strategy. It is a symbol of a new balance. A balance where India is not a follower, but a pillar, not a spectator, but a player. And for the people of India, this is also a lesson. Do not underestimate yourselves. The world is watching you. Your silence, your patience, your strength, they carry weight. Just like the country, each one of you has the ability to rise, to transform, to go from dependence to independence, from being overlooked to being respected. The rise of India is the rise of confidence, and when confidence replaces fear, when silence replaces desperation, When independence replaces dependence, then no force in the world can ignore you. That is what India has shown. The rise is real. The rise is here. And the world has no choice but to listen. Even when India says nothing. Negotiation is not about talking more. Negotiation is about talking less and making every silence count. When two people, two companies, or even two nations sit at the table, the one who speaks first usually loses. Why? Because the moment you reveal your needs, your fears, or your desperation, the other side gains control. The one who stays quiet, who listens, who waits, that is the one who sets the terms. When a world leader begged for India's help and India chose silence, it became one of the greatest lessons in negotiation. The silence was not an accident. It was not a lack of answer. It was a message. We do not need to prove anything. If you need us, you will wait. And if you wait, you will pay the price of patience. That is the power of negotiation. I have seen this many times in business. A young entrepreneur once told me, "Sir, I lost the deal because I kept lowering my price." I asked him, "Why did you keep lowering it?" He said, "Because the client kept saying no." That was his mistake. Every time he spoke, every time he offered more, he gave away his strength. The client just sat silently and waited until he broke. Negotiation is not about offering more. It is about holding your position until the other side realizes they need you more than you need them. This is exactly what happened on the global stage. A superpower showed its need. India showed its patience. The one who needed spoke. The one who had the power remained silent. That silence created pressure. That pressure created curiosity. And that curiosity created leverage. Suddenly, the world was not discussing the request, but the silence that followed it. And in that silence, India won the negotiation without saying a single word. Lesson is very simple. In negotiation, the side that can wait longer wins. The side that talks less gains more. The side that shows patience controls the outcome. Think about your own life. How many times have you rushed into answering someone? How many times have you agreed too quickly, lowered your value too easily, or given away your strength too cheaply? All because you could not handle silence. Silence makes most people uncomfortable, but if you can master it, silence becomes your greatest weapon in negotiation. A mentor once told me, never negotiate when you are hungry. Never negotiate when you are desperate. The other side can smell it. This is why building independence is important, because only when you don't depend too much on the deal, on the client, on the other side, you can afford to stay silent, and that silence makes them fear losing you. On the surface, India's silence looked passive, but in reality, it was the smartest negotiation move. It forced the other side to wait, to rethink, to wonder. It turned the tables completely. Instead of India chasing approval, the world was chasing India's answer. That is what great negotiation looks like. You don't run after people, you make them run after you. So remember this. Negotiation is not about who shouts louder. It is about who can stay calmer. It is not about who fills the silence with words. It is about who can control the silence until the other side breaks. In business, in politics, in life, the one who can hold the silence holds the power, and that is the ultimate lesson of negotiation. The world is not shocked by what is expected. The world is shocked by what it never saw coming. When a powerful leader begged for India's help, that was already unusual, but the true shock did not come from the request. The true shock came from what followed: silence. Why was the silence more powerful than the request? Because the world is used to answers. We live in an age of instant reactions. Someone makes a statement. Within minutes there is a reply, a tweet, a press release. But when the whole world was waiting for an answer and none came, people froze. Analysts had no explanation. Journalists had no headline. People kept asking, why is India not responding? What does this silence mean? And the more they asked, the louder the silence became. That silence created a global shockwave. It was not just about one leader and another. It was about the message hidden inside. the message that India does not need to jump at every request, the message that the balance of power has shifted, the message that in today's world, even the most powerful cannot force an answer when the other side chooses to remain silent. In business, I have seen this exact shockwave many times. A giant company tries to bully a small startup. They demand an answer, they expect compliance, but the small startup refuses to react. It just stays silent and keeps building. At first, giant laughs, but slowly they begin to worry. Why are they not replying? Why are they not scared? Do they know something we don't? That doubt spreads like fire. The silence becomes noise, and suddenly the power equation changes. That is exactly what happened on the world stage. The silence was not only India's silence. It was the silence of a rising power. It was the silence of confidence. It was the silence that forced every nation to rethink. Maybe India is not the same country we once knew. Maybe it is stronger than we imagined. Maybe the future is changing and we didn't notice until now. And this is why the shock was global. It wasn't just about two leaders. It was about a signal to the entire international community. A signal that said, India will not be rushed, India will not be pressured. India will respond when it chooses, not when others demand. That independence was louder than any declaration. Now ask yourself, why does silence shock us so much? Because silence is rare. Everyone is talking, shouting, arguing, selling, convincing. But when someone stays quiet, our minds cannot handle it. We keep thinking about it. We replay it again and again. The shock does not fade, it grows. This is the same in life. If someone insults you and you fight back, the story ends quickly. If someone insults you and you say nothing, they keep wondering. They cannot sleep. They ask themselves, why didn't he respond? What is he planning? Did I go too far? That is the power of silence. It creates a shockwave that words cannot. The moment the world was waiting for a quick yes or no, and instead got nothing, was the moment everything changed. The silence became the news. The silence became the power. The silence became the turning point. World expected words. What it got was silence, and that silence shook the world.